Hey there, Jeff Slakey from iFIBER 1 News Radio, station manager and host of Daybreak. Coming up, you're going to get a chance to see and hear the candidates during the League of Women Voters Speed Dating Format Forum that was at the PUD 3 building on Johns Prairie Road. We were able to sit down with 8 candidates for 4 races: assessor, district court judge, sheriff, and county commissioner. The League of Women Voters curated and asked many of the questions to the candidates as they move from table to table. What you'll hear are some of those questions, as well as some from the citizens that were sitting around the table during the League of Women Voters Speed Dating Forum at PUD 3.
Okay.
Where does the buck stop for erroneous evaluations being sent out?
What exactly? Tell me exactly what you're saying here.
Does the buck stop at you?
Of course.
When?
Yes. I
How did that
fully
many
acknowledge
come out? Whose fault?
Okay. I guess I'm not quite getting what you're saying.
Whose fault for the erroneous evaluations coming out? Is that you? Or was it the evaluators?
Okay, that's where I'm going with this. Okay, if you have a value that you don't think is correct, you need to come to our office. We need to fact check. We need to make sure that we've got everything right. We've got your house where it should be, square foot right, property, acreage, or front foot exactly right. And then if you still disagree with us, it is your right to go to the Board of Equalization, which is independent of us. They don't have anything to do with us, and they are a separate entity that's going to look at that value, and they can decide if we're right or we're wrong. And if you still disagree with them, you move on to the State Board of Tax Appeal. This doesn't cost you anything. It's your right as a taxpayer to go to another group of people to say, this is the value that I disagree with. And they would make that decision. If they make the decision the value's lower, we have to lower it.
Okay. I have a piece of property. My tax statement came out, said my pasture was $900,000. My wife calls down there. Somebody figured out that, yeah, somebody screwed up. It's $9,000. Whose fault?
Well, I'll tell you that ultimately, yes, it's my fault. But if any office I have worked in, you're going to have clerical errors. That is just a fact of life. We humans are not perfect. That's why I appreciate that you called in, and I appreciate that we were able to fix it, because that's what we do. We want our records correct. I gain nothing of you having to pay 10 times the amount of taxes that you thought that were due, because we get nothing in our office. Nobody gives me a raise, and they keep cutting my budget, so I'm just saying, no, that's what you need to do, that there are options for you, and we don't judge. If there's an error, we correct it.
Melody, a decrease in staffing over the past several years has led to a backlog of public services in the assessor's office. If elected, what is your plan to increase accuracy and productivity in the assessment process?
I disagree with that statement completely. I think that I know. Okay, definitely. We've finished our physical inspections on time. We get all our reports into the state on time. We have just become more effective and efficient. And what I do is I listen to my staff. If they've got a better way of doing something, that's how we do it. It's, they're taking on more of a load than they have before. There's things that my special projects that I'd like to get finished are pushed off to the side. But we have re-looked at how the appraisers even go out and do their work, and we've made it more efficient. There is no backlog of, your name changes or your boundary line adjustments, short plats. We are all current with that. So I don't know where that came from, but the only thing that is lacking is that we are closed on Friday, but you'll have to look that the treasurer and the auditor also reduce their hours to the public. There's another area within the county that closes on noon on Fridays. We've done what we had to do because I have to retain knowledgeable staff. My staff goes to a lot of classes, so they know what they're doing. So what they tell you is correct. And so I kind of take offense at that because we've worked really hard and my staff is really great. And I hate to see them demeaned in any way because the only thing I can say is, we're not open for a couple of hours, but I like to follow that up with, before I started working in the assessor's office, I never had been in the office. I've been in the treasurer and I've been in the auditor like everyone else. But as a routine, people don't come to our office weekly. So that said, that's where I'm at with that.
And I'll work on discussing that at the board meeting with whoever wrote the question.
Okay.
Just
And
to
it might
mention
just
it,
been
yeah.
a misunderstanding too.
By the way, I appealed to the Board of Equalization a few years ago with very nice results from my point of view. The fellows told me I was the best prepared. I had 8x10 glossies of
nice.
everything. So it works. If you dispute your assessment, it is something that, of the many things going on, that worked well for me.
Well, and I have to say, too, that once you appeal to the board, we do give you a call and say, let's look at this. What are we missing? Is there something we need to come out and look at again? So, because if we can resolve it before it goes to the Board of Equalization, it's to everyone's benefit. That's not a fun place to go.
I wouldn't have had to make all those 8x10 glossies.
Yeah.
What is the I think you've answered it, but I'm going to just let it be on the record. What is the assessor's role in assessment hearings that come before the Board of Equalization?
Okay. By state law, we have to take all the information, because when we go to do an appeal, a defense of value is what we call it, we have to kind of narrow in and do more of what we do is mass appraisal. So when we prepare something for the Board of Equalization, it has to be more on a fee appraisal basis. So if you're trying to buy a house and the bank says we need to get an appraisal, it's a much different type of appraisal. It's more detailed. You have to take your comps and you have to adjust them so that makes sense. You have to look more closely at the sales. Within mass appraisal, you're usually within an acceptable range of value. We try to make that as tight as we can. So there's a lot more prep work to it. So it takes time to get that together. So we have to gather that information and we have to send it both to the Board of Equalization and to the appellant so they know exactly what we're using in our defense of value. 21 days. They changed that. It used to be more.
I'm not familiar with, but I'm interested in knowing. In terms of property tax exemptions, I live in Union. Okay. Many people that are even older than I am. And how does that impact the revenues for our county, having the exemptions?
Anytime we have a number of exemption programs. We have exemptions for forest, farm and ag, disability and senior exemptions are the one that you probably hear the most about. You have to have an income that's under $40,000, and within that under $40,000, it's broke down into 3 more tiers. Some people may pay no taxes at all. Others will pay just a minimum. It does freeze your value, so it gives you a consistent tax base for as long as you're living in that home. It has to be your primary residence. But I will say, even though I have to agree these are good programs, anything that they don't pay, it does go out to all the other taxpayers. It's not free. You will take up that slack for the person in your neighborhood that doesn't have to pay that. But
I am going to ask a couple of the prepared questions and then see if anyone. Dave, you haven't said much. Do you have a question?
Yeah, Dave, speak up. Just kidding.
You said you have experience in that.
Uh-oh.
How is it a small lot that was appraised, in 1 year for like $1,300, and the next year it's $10,000? That's happened to my property. I'm wondering.
How it happened?
Yeah, what?
Was it a platted parcel? What size was it?
It's real small, and I went and appealed it and lost. So.
Oh wow! But it always had a nominal value on it in the past.
Yeah.
So the county went to acres, a value per acre. So I wonder, did you call and make sure everything was accurate on the parcel and the size?
Yeah, and they would come out and.
Because we have really nominal parcels down in Grays Harbor that we flag kind of as nuisance parcels if they're small, restricted. Some parcels are bought because of assemblage, just to make their parcel larger. So I would just call and voice your concern, but if you already went to the Board of Equalization, I mean...
I went to the county and they told us that it was just undervalued.
Oh. Well, if there's something pertaining to the property, like that you can prove on paper, maybe not buildable or something, you provide that to us and they should be able to adjust it.
Because you haven't held this post, can you describe your management style and experience and how it will benefit the employees and the public?
So, yeah, I've never been a manager, but when I was there, I was the most senior person. I was in charge of training all the staff. If I'm elected assessor, I want to make sure I have an open door policy. I want to make sure people know they're doing a good job and let them know. If they're doing a bad job, I want to talk to them about it and correct it. I want to make sure they feel comfortable coming to me with their concerns and their ideas, to keep the morale in the office high. I think if you have a good, happy staff, you'll get better employees.
How does the assessor ensure that timber companies are complying with requirements to retain their tax exemption?
So currently, in my 26 and a half years at Mason County, there was never an audit done on the timber programs. You'll have sometimes your neighbors will call in and say they're not compliant, so we will send somebody out. Currently in Grays Harbor, we do, if we're out on a parcel and they're not, it says it's a Christmas tree farm and there's a big house in a field, we do turn it into the clerical staff that handles the program, and she'll send out a letter. And if they don't return why they're not compliant, they'll get removed and pay compensating.
But if it's not reported, is there any surveying of the?
So I think all the programs need to be audited so we can send out letters of compliance, making sure they're still following their timber management plan that they turned in to what they're saying they're doing. So if they don't return something, they'll be removed and brought to full value.
Stop it, audited. I can't spell. Tax exemptions contribute to a decline in the county's revenue. What current homeowner, business, or industry tax exemptions do you believe the public would be willing to omit in order to balance the current county budget?
I don't think the public would be willing to omit any of them. I think if they're made compliant, we did the year before I left Mason County, we did audit the farm and agricultural program, and there was a lot of parcels not compliant. So if we audit at least every 6 years when we do a site inspection, they'll be more in line with their management plan and, remove to market value. The senior exemption is actually a tax shift, so it's not like it's not getting paid. So, it is getting paid. There is a head of household exemption for businesses. It's very nominal. When I first started, it was $3,000 and it's $9,000 now. So if you have a small business and your supplies is under the $9,000, it totally tax exempts you. And I think it helps the business. Yeah. So, I think it's a great program, and I don't think it'd ever be given up. But I think everything just needs to be compliant. So if you're not using it to what you said you're using it for, and you're getting a reduced tax, it'll be brought to market, and then you pay full rate.
I have a question that isn't written down.
Okay.
On my tax bill, sometimes I have a pasture adjoining my house, and it says no improvements. So there would be no taxable no increase because of no improvements. What constitutes improvements on property, aside from houses, which I could figure out?
So improvements are anything above and beyond the bare ground that improves your property. It could be a well, a driveway, anything that makes it more buildable. It could be, utility to it and stuff like that, versus a parcel you drive up to and it's all full of timber. It's not as desirable maybe because the next house or the next parcel down the road is already with a driveway and cleared and stuff like that. So we will assess for driveways, wells, septics as an improvement value. And it confuses people when they say improvement. They'll call and say, I've done no improvements to my, whatever. And it's like, it's not really, we're saying you improve something. It's just the improvements. And down below, it'll say buildings, septic, et cetera, driveways. So
I live next to an acreage, a small acreage that has mobile homes and RVs on it and kind of a little camp thing. And now they're there some animals have joined the little camp thing.
Oh, boy.
And what does the assessor's office call something? I know that the owner is collecting rent from these people.
Basically, the assessor's role is just to tax, what's on the property. We won't tax a mobile or a travel trailer or anything like that. So I know there's a lot of parcels out there with a lot of those situations. The mobile home we will tax, as an improvement to the property. So as far as like if they're not living it's more like maybe the building department or environmental health might be their department more. But if it's, I've known there was a case years ago where the neighbor complained that the neighbors like that, were decreasing the value of their home and they wouldn't be able to sell, which they took it to the Board of Equalization and they did win. They used that as a...
This is Larry.
Hi, Larry.
Hi. Are assessors appraisers?
Not all assessors, but I would be... there's accredited appraisers, but when people call the office, they're like, I need to speak to the assessor, which I think they mean the appraiser. The assessor is the elected official in the department.
Okay.
So
What I'm saying is, are the people who come out, are they qualified, licensed, certified appraisers?
Yes.
Not just assessor appraisers?
they're accredited appraisers. There's
So they've gone through the 3,000 hours of on-the-job training?
There's you got to do classes from the Department of Revenue. When I applied, it was only 1,000 hours out in the field as a trainee. So it took 6 months down at Grays Harbor Assessor to do that.
Because it was 3,000 hours about 20 years ago.
So I think it has changed a lot, and it's a little bit more. If you're out appraising and you have the hours, if your assessor has to sign off on your thing, otherwise there's an exam you have to take. So, and it's a pretty hard exam. So, but if you do all the classes and the time,
But I thought there was a difference between an appraiser going for a government and an appraiser going for private industry.
Exactly. Yeah, there is. So fee appraisers are different accreditations. Yeah.
So
Okay. Sorry.
Totally different.